Okay, it is 12 o'clock noon. Welcome to Journey into Indian Country, Entrepreneurial Opportunities and Cultural Tourism. Today we are going to have a discussion surrounding ecological knowledge and the importance of its sacredness. We have two very special guests with us today. We have Josiah Pinkham, a Nimiipuu storyteller and ethnographer, as well as Sierra Green, Native American environmental scientist. And then my name is Stacia Morphine. I am owner and operator of Nez Perce Tourism. So I would like to thank you for joining us today. I would like to also thank the IDRS Acorn Project. We've teamed up with them along with Nez Perce Tourism LLC. We joined forces to bring you a wonderful webinar series surrounding Journey into Indian Country. And our main focal point is to try to inspire and promote and protect and perpetuate cultural resources and weave them into how we can respectfully share cultural tourism with visiting guests in Indian country. And so we've had sessions from cultural preservation and economic development to developing multiple revenue streams within your cultural tourism business plan. And so, again, thank you for joining us today. This will be a 1 hour session. It is a very interactive session. So if you have any questions at any time, we will try to facilitate those as well in the chat box. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and ask Josiah Pinkham to introduce himself and then answer the question, what does ecological knowledge or sacred ecology mean to you? Josiah.
My name is Josiah, and I've grown up here on the Nez Perce Indian Reservation around the elders of my family, and spend a lot of time basically just listening to them and learning about the deep cultural knowledge that the Nez Perce people possess. I think the really important distinction that the Nez Perce people have in terms of sacred ecological knowledge, or a lot of the academic terms that are applied to this, is just basic experience and knowing the nuances in the relationship between the land and the people in this particular area. And that's something that I don't take lightly, because it's such a tremendous body of knowledge that encompasses, even though it's a small area of our planet, it's very specialized in terms of like how far back it goes. And so, you've likely heard that archaeologists have found that Nez Perce presence here, or the people, the indigenous population that is here, stretches back 16,000 years now, and it's caused archaeologists and anthropologists to kind of renegotiate their idea. I want to emphasize that, their idea of the peopling of this particular area. So the Nez Perces have always said, along the lines of, or at least in the contemporary historic period, that our presence goes back time immemorial. And what that means is, we really can't place exactly when we started being here, but the amount of knowledge that's encompassed in that relationship and how specialized it is accounts for a very unique experience. And, I've always tried to clarify that doesn't make our people better than any others, but it makes us uniquely experienced in how to survive in this particular area. And so I guess that's kind of my idea of how to approach this this concept of traditional ecological knowledge or sacred knowledge, however we're going to package it.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm so thankful that you brought up that unique connection to the land that we come from, and each tribe has that same connection to their areas, and that's why I think it's so important for us as Indigenous people to start sharing our story from our perspective. I know that I've done, a lot of work with your father, Alan Pinkham Sr. In my long life of 35 years, 10 of those have been dedicated to economic development and tourism. And your dad, throughout those 10 years has been extremely important in my understanding of how important this is for Native people to promote and to protect. And what I would like to share is that, for the folks who are online with us, go ahead and drop a comment from what nation you're from and what areas that encompasses, because those areas are very special to your people, and and as well as with your guests. And so it's so nice to be able to share those perspectives from your own standpoint. We have over 300 tourism related businesses in our region, and we have one that is Native American owned, and that's Nez Perce Tourism. So I'm probably pretty sure in your same areas that might be a similar case. And so I've done 2 years of market research in cultural tourism and tourism in our region, and there's 90% of those tourism companies are promoting something about the Nez Perce, whether it's the Lewis and Clark and the Nez Perce expedition, whether it's everything is tied something to the Nimiipuu. And it's just very important that our voices are echoed throughout this opportunity to share the truth of who we are, where we come from, and our individual things that we have to share, because not every tribe is alike, and not every band within those tribes are alike. So we all have something very unique to share with our guests. And so I'm thankful that you mentioned that, Josiah. Thank you. Sierra, do you have, we would like to hear from you next on what does ecological knowledge or sacred ecology mean to you, as well as give us an intro of who you are, please.
Yeah, thank you. Ina Monique Duas, Apocus Suitas, Soyapotimki Sierra Green. It's a pleasure to be on this webinar today and to have been asked to share my perspective. And really that's what it is. It's my perspective that I've gathered over my long 31 years on this land. And I have really thought about this question of sacred ecology and ecological knowledge. And being a faculty at Northwest Indian College in the Native Environmental Science program, this is something that we teach. I teach it's not just called ecology course, but it's the interrelatedness and connections to our environment. And so to me, and Josiah kind of alluded to this academic understanding of ecology, the water cycle, the phosphorus cycle, these cycles of nutrients throughout the planet, and these relationships between trees and squirrels. That's what I'm looking at right now, and the robins flying by, and the clouds in the sky, the rain that's falling. These are all, yes, there's ecological concepts tied into those, but to me, what really separates that and makes things sacred is the light that each of those carry. And when we talk about our sacred relationship or sacred ecological knowledge, it's not just an understanding of these things, it's a relationship with these things and with all these relatives and beings around us. And so thinking about that relationship, there's also this responsibility that comes with it, and this reciprocity and respect that's tied to all of that. So those are the 4 R's that we really include and that are at the foundation of ecology for us. It's more than just this understanding. It's this inherent relationship that we've been passed down, that we've really been brought up from. As was mentioned, we come from the land, and I love their stories, and a couple of questions down the line I'll kind of talk about that, but really they share these ideas of these relationships that are not just from a understanding. And I think sometimes that's hard to teach folks if we don't include the stories or if we don't include the language. And I was thinking about this as we were driving to the location we're at right now, and our stories, they're not just traditional, and they're not just Wakipa, right, from a long time ago. Us every day as we continue to build this relationship with our homelands, we're generating and creating and sustaining these relationships with our homelands and with our place of being. And so sacred ecology is not just a study or a understanding of something, but it's living. This is something that we're all living in. And thinking about tourism and sharing that with some of the guests who may be coming to the homelands of our people or your people, whoever may be in attendance on this webinar, it's really trying to perpetuate that idea of this isn't just knowledge that we're passing on to you. This is the experience. This is a relationship that we're inviting you to build with our homelands as well. And so to me, that's really a brief yet inclusive explanation of sacred ecology. There's a lot of great presentations out there and books about sacred ecology. But to me, as Josiah also mentioned, it's being with the elders, being with the land itself. That's the best teachers of these concepts.
All right, Imakis Katsiaya, Sierra. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next question, and it is, how can Indigenous knowledge be respectfully woven into tourism or shared with non-tribal guests? And do you have any examples? Josiah, I'll go ahead and start with you. Or Sierra, if you have something, you can go ahead and go. I can't hear him if he's speaking. Again, really quick, the question was, how can Indigenous knowledge be respectfully woven into tourism or shared with non-tribal guests? Give examples.
Yeah, so I really love that our homelands, we have these geographical places where there's stories tied to it. And I think anytime somebody comes to our homelands, and even for me as faculty teaching students who are from our community, within our community, they may be from this place, but maybe they haven't been to all these different places. And to always start out with our creation story in the heart of the monster. To me, that's so valuable because that places us and it ties us to this this physical place. It describes that relationship that I was talking about, and really is always for me a good starting point. I like to tell that story in various presentations, but also embedding the stories throughout any courses that I teach, whether it be ecology, animal biology, cell biology. There's all sorts of information and knowledge within the stories that can be shared and that have been shared. And again, going back to like sharing our personal narrative, it's not just these traditional stories, but then for me to sit here, at a riverbank and tell, how it is that I caught my first salmon. Sharing those personal narratives that you may have across the homeland or across the landscape. Somebody else who may be in the audience or who may be a guest of yours can say, oh, then they'll want to share their first time they caught a salmon or a trout or a catfish or a bass, whatever it may be. And that personal connection that you build with the guests really starts to tie you together, or weave your stories weave together to become something that can be a common ground for both sides. And that's really a big part of, to me, sharing our knowledge. It's partially what's been passed down, and of course to respectfully share that. And as you know, a lot of our geographical sites have those stories posted at them. There's been several or a handful of books released of coyote stories of the Nez Perce people and even across the plateau, and then elder recordings. You know, I am young, and so I haven't spent a lot of time or a lot of the elders who told, you know, a lot of these stories I wasn't able to engage with prior to their passing. And so I really value recordings that have been shared with folks like me who are interested in hearing the stories and appreciating them, valuing them and respecting them enough to share them when appropriate. You know, so there are stories that are only appropriate to be shared at certain times or to be shared, you know, maybe there's stories that young men are only to hear and not young women. So I might not even know those exist, or if not, but I appreciate and respect that, you know, those boundaries. And so I really look to the landscape to tie us together and our personal narrative as ways of sharing our homelands with people.
Can you tell us a little bit about some of the work you're doing with our brothers and sisters from some of the state and federal public land spaces?
Yeah, so we developed a program called Nimi Punawit, Lifeways of Our Homelands, or Lifeways of the Nez Perce. And with this program, I've worked with countless youth camps and come to realize that the adult chaperones are elbowing their way to the front, wanting to get their hands dirty and do what the youth are doing. And they always say, we never had this when we were children. So I hope you youth, you know, appreciate this opportunity. So we developed Nimi Punawit, which is a program for adults. And it isn't just for the adult participants in our community, but we've also worked with the tribe, the Nez Perce tribe, and natural resources, cultural resources, water resources, various departments within the Nez Perce tribe, and then also local agencies. So we've tied in Idaho Fish and Game. We've tied in the Nez Perce National Historical Park. We've tied in the U.S. Forest Service. And so bringing in all these external agencies has allowed them to really create an understanding of who we are as Nimipu and why maybe this little stream that they're clear cutting around is important to us, rather than it just being in a document that says, oh, the Nez Perce were at this certain location. What we did was we took partners out to these locations, gave them a tukus, and said, you know, dig our medicines, smell our medicines, put your hands in the stream where our medicines grow, and, you know, take some home with you. It'll protect you. And building that relationship really transformed some of our partners' perspectives of what it means to protect our treaty rights, and what it means to protect this maybe this forgotten stream, and then to also with the Idaho Fish and Game to tell them our stories and to show them our artifacts in the museum of bighorn sheep, and for them to understand, you know, it's not just a wildlife conservation matter. This is a relative of ours that we have long history tied to, that really connects us to this animal relative. It's not just about population dynamics and going back to these kind of ecological terms. It's about protecting and healing our relative and bringing them back to bringing them back into our circle of our culture. And so those are just some examples of what we've done with Nimi Punawit. And I've never really thought about our program, Nimi Punawit, and tourism in the same boat, but yet here we are connecting, and this goes back to, you know, sacred ecology, but really connecting our adult participants to our homelands. And through Stacia, what you're doing with Nez Perce Tourism, it's connecting these visitors to our homelands. And so there is this tight relationship between what we're doing. And I think the approach is very similar, and I can appreciate that.
Yeah, it was my true honor to work with Nimi Punawit this summer as a participant and as a subcontractor. Sierra and her program were able to work with Nez Perce Tourism to provide the rafting the riverbeds of the Nez Perce experience on the Salmon River. And so if you look on a map, the Nimipu, the Nez Perce people, our ancestral homelands are very vast. It's a large part of the Pacific Northwest. And if you look on a map, you can see that modern day states it consists of, Washington, Idaho, Oregon, Montana, Nevada, parts of California, up into Canada. And so there's a large area that we have responsibility for. And it was so neat to be able to connect with and bring our tribal people who've never experienced a trip on a raft on our sacred water on the Salmon River. And it's neat that we have, our own place names, which are our Aboriginal names of the territories of those areas, those streams, those mountains, those digging areas, because there's a huge connection with our language and the areas that we visit. And so trying to utilize our place names as much as possible gives us a deeper understanding of that specific spot. So it was really neat being able to work with Nimipu now this summer and provide that segment of the rafting trip. And so I know a lot of our guests, at the end of the day, and these are our own people from our own nation, they were just so deeply touched and ingrained by the feeling that they felt at these places because it's so powerful. And, our own people sometimes haven't experienced that. And so it's just so liberating to see that, now our people understand this specific area. And now they bring their families there. They bring their kids, their grandkids, they camp, they can fish there. And it's so neat just being a small part of that opportunity to share information about our area in a very respectful way for both tribal and non-tribal folks. But it looks like Josiah is back on the line. He's having a little bit of technical difficulties. So let's see if we can hear some information from him.
Okay.
Josiah, are you there?
Yeah, I'm back online now. I'll talk and try to pay attention to my connection here, and I'll stop if I feel that I'm getting cut off from by tech issues. But I think I've been thinking about this particular question quite a bit since you asked me to participate, and it's really difficult to answer it in a black and white fashion. It's not as simple as whether or not this should be shared with outsiders. It's more along the lines of how in touch with you are the cultural values that have sustained our people since time immemorial. And the only way that you can get in touch with that value structure is by participating in activities that express it. You have to have an intimate connection with the people that are working to sustain that, so that you can make informed decisions about what's appropriate to share or not. Because it's not so easy to say things should or shouldn't be shared. Things have to be shared because that's how people learn. But there are things that shouldn't be shared because that's what keeps them sacred. And that's a really difficult decision to make on many things, because I can think of some examples. I can recount some examples that I've come across in the years that I've been working. And, I've done a lot of interviews with Nez Perce elders and people that utilize these things. And when it comes down to things like huckleberry patches, people don't like to share that kind of information. Men don't want to tell where they hunt. And there are aspects of the stories that I tell that come from specialists in my family And there are things in there that I only tell when I'm surrounded by my young people. And I don't even share them with other Nez Perces. And that's a real dilemma, because what I'm facing as I gain more experience is that I have to prepare my young people to inherit not just the knowledge, but how to manage it, how to keep it sacred. Because, you know, I see ways that we're slipping up, and I count myself, you know, no different from many of my other contemporaries, but the information that I know about, say, pictographs and petroglyphs comes from individuals like Alex Pinkham Sr., Sam Waters. I mean, individuals of that caliber who say the only people that know what those pictographs and petroglyphs mean are the people that put them there. Everybody else is just talking talk. And so adding to that is the idea that, you know, comes from my grandfather, Alex. He talked about how the people that did that work there, they sacrificed. They went without food, without, you know, their basic comforts, so that they could humble themselves to some spirit that would come forth and say, you know, if you keep this sacrifice up throughout your life, I will help you, I'll help your family, I'll help your people to survive. And then they left a mark on the wall describing what that deep, intimate, lifelong relationship was. And they only talked about it when they became old. And we dilute the sacred work by taking outsiders there and posing and taking pictures. And I'm not in favor of that. But yet, counter to that is the need for them to understand. And that's a dilemma, because I can't weed those people out that are going to disrespect that place. It's really difficult to do, because there are outsiders that will lie to gain access to those places. They will lie to basically access that sacred knowledge. But yet, I need for outsiders to understand that, so that they can help me to take care of places like that. And see that simple idea about the writing on the wall that those people went through is just one symbol of, you know, it's a portal into a realm that's deeply spiritual, deeply esoteric. And I'm very careful about who I take to places like that. I mean, honestly, there are people in my own family that I can't take to places like that. So when it comes to expanding things like that to the aspect of tourism, I'm very, very careful.
Okay, thank you, Josiah, for that explanation. I know that I'm over here just taking notes, and there's some things that are just really resonating, you know, within my soul and my spirit on, you know, what's sacred versus secret versus commonly known versus things that we should and could share. So thank you for that explanation. I can just hear and feel the passion in your voice, as well as you're explaining these connections that we have to some of our very sacred sites. So I appreciate that. It looks like we do have a question from Buck Jones. He says, I have an issue with this on marketing salmon for Quick Pick. Some of the commissioners and fishers do not want to promote salmon as it's the first food. They believe its promotion is against our ways and do not want non-tribal to encroach and disrespect our ways. I see the value in promotion as it is a story that it's already there to be told. Do you have any thoughts or suggestions on this? And Buck Jones is an enrolled Cayuse. So Josiah or Sierra, do you have any answers to the question on marketing salmon for Quick Pick?
Well, I'll tell you what I was raised with, because that's my experience, and it's that, you know, first and foremost, salmon are a part of a sacred relationship that is difficult for me to commercialize in the first place. When I get salmon, it's just too important for me to sell. And if I do sell it, it's going to be to people that I know that I'm close to. And so for me to be a salmon salesman, I mean, I'm just, you know, I'm not pressed into that. All my salmon goes to my family, and, you know, if I have an extra, I will sell it, but it'll be to, you know, elders that ask for it and that offer money, and then I'll take the money and put it into something useful. So, you know, for me, it's pretty easy to understand where Buck is coming from, because I just don't think that that's a value system that is sustainable for that relationship.
Yeah, I echo that, and I've thought a lot about this working with, you know, food sovereignty issues, and I thought it was really interesting. We had a speaker at our food summit talk about added value to. She was talking about different herbal medicines and whatnot, and I really thought about it and even prayed about it, because I make soap from one of our medicines. And I thought, you know, regarding this instance with me making the soap, I thought, you know, I would rather have some people don't want to use the medicine, or don't know how to use it, or, you know, if they just have the medicine alone, they don't actually utilize it or engage with it. But through the soap, they'll wash their hands with it, they'll wash their face with it, and they'll have that engagement, even if it's not in I would say, a traditional manner. They're still engaging with that medicine in some way. So in thinking about the salmon, you know, there's this added value, and I really echo what Josiah is saying. You know, is this a sustainable market regarding our culture? And I think, you know, as we're out here, we got the dip net and gaff pole up on top of the car right now, and the fishing poles you can see in the background. You know, with the numbers of salmon coming through being so low, how are we to say that we should be selling this when we don't have enough salmon for our own communities, for our own people? Fortunately, we have a freezer full from last year, and we're going to can that up, and whatever we catch this year, you know, really distribute to members of the family who will appreciate that and respect, you know, the work and time and prayers. And I talked to my brother a lot about this, who's one of the students in our program, because he's interested in looking at the salmon runs. And I say, you know, a lot of people want to consider or have an opinion about fish closures. How many people are out there praying about it? And to me, I say all this to bring in this market value. You know, we used to have a really great economic structure of bartering and trading, and everybody would help take care of one another. Well, now we don't have that, and people will say, oh, I want a salmon, and they'll even be willing to pay for it. And so if we do sell a salmon, we don't look at it as, oh, we're making money off of this. We say, okay, that money is to pay for the gas that it took us to get there, the ice to put into our coolers, you know, the products that we had to buy to make our tools and things like that. But we don't ever see it as something as a market to make money per se, as, you know, to pay the bills. Really, it's to continue to do what we're doing to feed the community. And I think when we start to structure our economic value on something that's sacred as salmon, a relative, you know, we would never sell a brother or a sister to a economy for money, but we will pay to promote, you know, somebody to a higher level. and for them to pass on this knowledge or this blessing to more people beyond what we can. So it's really this, when you talk about this promotion, it's not really economic promotion of something. In my perspective, it's a promotion of the sacredness and this blessing that this relative is providing us.
Okay, thank you. Buck, let us know if you would like any further discussion on your question, and thank you for leaving that in our chat. The next question is Josiah, what are you currently working on to protect and preserve this knowledge within your own community?
So the first thing is that I'm interested in it, and even that's kind of to put it lightly. I'm deeply interested in particular, the values that our people have worked so hard over the, since time immemorial. The unique way in which we've assembled our values, and I'm also deeply passionate about learning of other ways, because that helps me to be introspective on how to protect it and mostly perpetuate it, because it's all about the values. The values have to survive. And we've had language and cultural expression that have sustained those values for generations. And now more than ever before, we're being challenged on how to reposition those values, and the survival of those values is deeply challenged. And especially in this cyber age, and as quickly as things are changing faster than ever before. And people are now people have more option to pursue knowledge than ever before, and that's an amazing thing. But that knowledge needs to serve the survival of two things in particular: the survival of the DNA. That's the science side of it. The DNA has to be out there. There has to be, people still walking this part of the earth. But the culture is about defending the values, and the language expresses the relationships between all the different things that we depend upon for our survival. So all of that has to work together in this uniquely beautiful package that's eons old. And we need to get in touch with that intimately, express it, and just basically pass that deep interest on to our young people. I mean, we have to inspire our young people to be active in perpetuating our culture. And that's something that I really work hard with. I try to do my best to involve myself with young people, to make sure that I'm just present there, and try to tell stories and talk to them, and do all of that stuff. That's a deep passion of mine. I'm quickly becoming I'm at the point now where I know that I have a lot to pass on. And if I don't put myself in the presence of young people and talk to them, they're not going to have the interest to pursue. I mean, any human being isn't going to get interested in something that they're not exposed to. And so I just try to be a presence around my young people.
Sierra, are you currently working on anything right now within your own community that helps you respectfully protect and preserve the knowledge, the ecological knowledge of our people?
Yeah, so I think Nimi Punawa is just one example of the work that I would say I've been given the responsibility to endure at some point, enjoy and endure. And my name, Sepulchus Litis, means thing that causes survival. And this, name really carries this heavy responsibility to, for what I say is protect and heal our homelands. And that is perpetuating this knowledge to the future generations and also to all of us who are present right now. A lot of times I think about the ancestors of the past, and I ask our youth and adults, what legacy will you leave for the ancestors of the future? And in framing that question and posing that to folks, they begin to realize that they have a role and a responsibility in the knowledge that they've been given and the knowledge that they need to acquire in their lifetime, and then their responsibility to pass that on. And so I really enjoyed working with adults because I feel like, through a lot of the historical trauma and the really the resilience, though, of our people across the Americas and across the globe, really, of Indigenous people do hold on to these, yes, Josiah, the values are so important. The values, the knowledge, I've heard knowledge can, I've heard people say knowledge has been lost, but really it's maybe forgotten, or it's resting until the right person comes along who's ready for that knowledge again. And so for us to, we're not always passed on the knowledge maybe that we want, but we're passed on the knowledge that we're ready for. And so I am young, and I am young in my walk, but I do feel this really heavy responsibility to give others what it is that I've gained. And maybe that's not all the knowledge that I have, but it's opening these pathways for them to explore what it is that their responsibility is going to be to continue to pass on our culture and our values and our knowledge to the future generations, that legacy that's, we're going to be part of this long stream of timeline of since time immemorial. Down the line at some point, we're going to be that, long time ago, we're going to be that since time immemorial strand where it's so long ago that it'll only be part of stories. And yes, we have all this technology and written down, manners of passing knowledge, but at some point down the line, we're going to be that legacy, or those old people who once, shared knowledge. And for me, Nimi Punao is one example, but also working with the youth in various summer camps, whether it's a STEM-focused camp or a cultural camp, really providing students this pathway, the youth and adults both, this pathway of understanding the cultural components and the career pathways that they can pursue to protect and heal our homelands. And to me, that's my responsibility, and I don't take it very lightly. I take it as something, as a life purpose, and I'm grateful to be given that task, and I'm grateful for folks like Josiah and some of the attendees that are have directed me on this path and have continue to contribute to my knowledge and how to move forward on my own journey. So I just hope to be that that light and support for others in the future.
Thank you, Sierra and Josiah. Do you guys have a call to action for our audience, whether they're tribal entrepreneurs, tribal community members, students? Do you have something that you would like to share with them as far as things that we could do to protect and preserve our ecological knowledge and to keep it sacred and to keep those spaces that are for the people, to the people, and how can we continue to respectfully share the things that are commonly known or widely shared?
Yeah, I think I'll offer just some guidance that was given to me when I was young, and it's just, yeah, I mean, it's easy to say, but it's difficult to practice. But just get deeply interested in it. Read. I mean, I've got tons of books that I continuously go back to, and a lot of it is coyote stories, historical documents. I do a lot of archival research, and when I go through that stuff, I don't read it because I don't just read it because I feel it's entertaining. Like when I read a coyote story that I haven't read in a while, it's a chuckle, of course, it's entertaining, but I'm reading it because I'm reflecting on it too, and I'm trying to commit it to memory. And the reason why that's important is because those stories are expressions of relationships that are unique to the problem-solving skill set that has sustained our people up to this point. And we have to have those stories in a place where they're available for us, where they're, as quick as a thought. They come in and help us to deal with a situation. And we all know that human beings encounter challenges at a rate that's a lot faster than will allow you the time to go to a bookshelf and pull off a book and figure out how to deal with it. And so that's just along the pathway of story, because those coyote stories and the stories about the interaction of animal people and human beings, I mean, they're all very rich with problem solving skills, coping mechanisms, stuff that gives you executive function. And when it comes to getting interested in, rituals and ceremonies, the reason why those are important is because they mark transition. And in that transition is healing and release. Because, we have a very unique skill set here that our people have worked very hard to amass, that includes ritual and ceremony. And what rituals and ceremonies do in terms of the specificity that deals with marking transition is they allow you to release something that you're done dealing with. And we all need opportunities like that. But they also reinstill you, they rejuvenate your interest in marching forward. They empower you to take that next day. Because, I mean, just as an example that maybe our non-native counterparts might relate to, a birthday party or celebration is a ritual of transition, where, for a young child that's turning from 6 to 7 years old, well, you're putting away all the challenges that a 6-year-old deals with, and you're looking forward to now you're going to be a 7-year-old and deal with the challenges that a 7-year-old deals with. And the rite of passage that deals with a young man killing his first deer is a ritual of transition out of childhood and into adolescence and young adulthood to what now they're responsible for taking care of family, for assisting in that way. That needs to be a mark of transition for a young man. And so my call is get deeply interested in that stuff because it's important.
Okay, thank you, Josiah. I appreciate that. I'm going to go ahead and have Sierra answer this question, and then we do have a question in our webinar chat from Jeremy. So we will get right to your question as well, Jeremy. Sierra?
All right, can you hear me now? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I was having some microphone issues. Thinking about the call to action for for everybody, really. I think, Josiah, I really appreciate your comment about reflection. And I too, listening to stories or reading stories again that I've heard as a child and hearing them again, you know, as an adult or even as an adult and 2 years later, those stories, like I had mentioned in the beginning, the sacred ecology in these stories, they're living. They're teaching us as we grow. They're not a stagnant type of being. The spirit and the knowledge within these stories is living, and it's something that we can continue to learn from throughout our own growth and our own journey. But the call to action that I think is most important for whether it be guests of your tourism business, or whether it be coworkers in your office, or for me, students, and I always consider myself a student in my own classroom, because a lot of our students have bounds of knowledge that I haven't even considered yet. So, but the four R's, and I'll put those down in the chat box for all attendees to visualize, but respect, reciprocity, relationships, and responsibility. And if we take time, all of us in our path and our journey, to reflect on these four R's in our daily activity, when we're beginning a new endeavor, visiting a new place, you know, have respect for those that you're engaging with. Always think about reciprocity, because we don't want our engagements to be transactional. We don't want to just give something and get something back. We want our engagements to be transformational. And so on my desk, I have a sticky note that says transformational every day. I don't want to do things that are just transactional. That's not really our cultural way of just giving and being transactional. We want to be transformative. We want to build these relationships. We want to hold somebody else accountable for what it is that they're offering, and be accountable to what it is that we're offering. And that ties into that reciprocity, something that we're both going to be giving and getting something back, that transformational engagement. And it only happens authentically and genuinely with respect tied to it and at the foundation of it. So the call to action for all of us each day is to practice these four R's, consider these four R's, even if it's, probably especially when there's tension. Go back to these four R's, and it really brings things into a perspective that allows you to kind of decompress and hash out what it is that's bringing up all these emotions. You know, is what we're doing founded in respect? Is it promoting, and are we engaging in reciprocity? Is this building our relationship? And am I being accountable to my responsibility? And are you being accountable to yours? And so those four R's are really powerful in all that we do. And I think tourism businesses can really learn a lot from that and teach those to their guests who are coming to our homelands, which are all sacred places.
Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and answer Buck Jones's question about the marketing of salmon with QuickPick. And so, you know, we do understand that each of our nations along the tributaries surrounding QuickPick do have their own folks who do commercial fishing, whether it's for tribal purposes, ceremonial purposes, kind of side hustle sale purposes. But I know for me and for Nez Perce Tourism, you know, our hunting, fishing, and gathering, those specific acts are sacred to us. So those aren't things that we would consider selling at this time. I know we do have a Nimi Poo fly fisher guide, and then we also have a guide on the Snake and Clearwater rivers who've been knocking at the door wanting to partner on, you know, promoting salmon, steelhead fishing. But that's just not something that Nez Perce Tourism is interested in at this time. I know for my family, my grandfather, Larry Green, he instilled in us at a very young age, that we only take from the land what we need. And, participating in fish distribution as a economic tool is something that I don't plan on doing. But marketing the stories of our salmon, our roots, our relationship with our ancestors from the hunting aspect, those stories are so important to tie to the areas that our guests are visiting, because there is so much history, emotion, that's given in that process. And so for marketing the salmon story along, the Columbia, Clearwaters, the corridors and our tributaries within our ancestral homelands, I think is extremely important for us to do. And the best people to do that is the people of that land. Whether, it's the sharing stories of our Salilo days and our lamprey and our salmon, whether it's talking about our grandmother Rock, who watches us and sees what we do along these corridors, and sharing what some of those stories mean to us and our guests, because it's important that folks know that we're there and that we've always been there, and they won't know unless we continue to share those places and those stories. Again, I did a big study prior to opening the Nez Perce Tourism LLC with our tribal members, and we focused heavily on the sacred, secret, commonly known, and widely shared, whether it's areas, themes, topics, places, locations. And so we're extremely careful on the information that we share. And I'm glad that Josiah mentioned it too. So my typical tour with a group of all Nimiipus is going to be extremely different from a group of guests that we promote in the community. And so one of the things that I have to be very careful with as a marketing director as well within my own company is, some of the language and the images that we use could very easily be saw as something different. And so I remember when I first started my company, I had a dinner with the Nez Perce, and we promoted Nassau salmon. And through this event, we did partake in eating salmon, which was from one of our local hotels, and we had to use, their services that they provided. We weren't allowed to bring in, our wild salmon that we caught. But we did serve a salmon meal, and we were able to thoroughly explain, through song, dance, history from our elders, why this is so important to us. And they were able to become immersed and embellished in that representation. And so I know that I got a little bit of pushback from my local community because, maybe it looked through the marketing aspects that we were promoting. It could have been like a ceremonial kind of longhouse type of gathering. And, that's something that, I believe is kind of completely off limits for our non-tribal guests to partake in something like that. So I have to be extremely careful in each word that I use for marketing Nez Perce tourism. Some of the photos could be extremely misleading as well. So it's hard to try to balance marketing in with, respect and not creating an image that's very alive and very interactive and welcoming to our guests, but it's also respectful of our tribal people, because that's the last thing that we want to do is disrespect our people, our salmon people as well, because that's who we are and that's who is part of us. So I'm glad that you asked that question about the issues involving with kind of tourism and geotourism. And then as being a part of IANTA, there's just such a wonderful network to be with and amongst. I know that a lot of our old Nez Perce folks have some strong ties with some of the original IANTA founders. And so I highly respect, their guidance and their opinions. They just recently hooked me up with a ecotourism company. It's an international company out of Canada, and it's Indigenous found. And I'm learning lots of information from them about, the folks in the group, they some of them don't even eat honey. They don't eat elk, deer. They don't eat salmon because it's something that their beliefs are in promoting, the consumption. We're harming the bees if we're able to gather the honey in a certain way. And so, just really learning from a global scale of indigenous people's beliefs is very, it's an honor to be a part of these things. And just last week, they asked the question about, what are your beliefs on promoting, guided hunting trips, guided fishing trips, and things. So that's something that it's very deep, and it's a very sensitive subject. And I don't think that is something that Nez Perce Tourism personally should or will be involved in at any time. We did have one more question from Jeremy. I'm going to go back up as well. So the last question is what are your thoughts on using opportunity of tourism to not just teaching others about Nez Perce culture, but to also plant seeds for tourists to feel like they have permission to put down their own roots into a place they call home? So in some way, visitors won't necessarily become Indian, but they can start living and treating their adopted homeland in a sacred way. Is this appropriate to encourage them to find from their own spiritual connection to their adopted homeland as a way to hopefully protect our lands by creating more and more people who hold the sacred land and precious in a way that's culturally appropriate to themselves, but informed by Nez Perce wisdom of what's appropriate in our lands? And that was from Jeremy, Five Crows, Nimipu, Nez Perce, and the Cryptic Public Affairs as well.
I guess I'll go ahead and tackle that one. Thank you for the question, Jeremy. That's a difficult one because I think as a Nez Perce, it's difficult for me to give, as you put in quotes, permission for people to put down their roots in any given place. I think that it's more important for outsiders to become as familiar as they can with the core values that sustain the indigenous population that they're moving into. Because I guess as I grew up here on the reservation, I kind of took for granted the value that I have for the relationship when I was younger. Anyway, I took this for granted that I was actually taught a value for the relationship between elder kinfolk and junior kinfolk, because in Nez Perce language, there's this term anakonma, which refers to all those people that have come before you, and it typically refers to those individuals that have passed away, but the term is interpreted as elder kinfolk. It includes the human beings that have sacrificed, obviously, to put you where you're at, to make choices for that survival, but it also includes animal people. So the Nez Perces look up to animals for guidance in how to survive here. That's what that core story, Witmipnima, that's what that explains, is that the elders are the animal people. Now, the Nez Perces have always turned to the animal people for spiritual sustenance along with other ways. And that relationship between the elder kinfolk, animal people, and the junior kinfolk, us, didn't translate when outsiders came here in 1805. And it still hasn't rooted. Not to the extent that's necessary for America to survive. And the reason why I say that is because the general public has to develop a notion that the elder kinfolk are the indigenous populations that are in the areas where they're found now. Because they possess a very unique skill set and knowledge base that has essentially worked to help those humans survive there. And America comes in, and America has some very positive aspects to its society, but one of the things that it doesn't have is, who are the elders that I turn to if I'm making land management decisions in this place? So the Nez Perces here aren't regarded as the elder kinfolk for the outsiders that have moved in. And if they can develop that, I think that's the closest that we can get to this idea of having permission to put seeds down in any particular area. I think that relationship has to manifest, because that's part of that that expression of the core values that have sustained the Nez Perce. And if human beings are going to survive here, it's because they have a sensitive relationship with their landscape. And right now, America is really struggling with that.
Yeah, and I just want to quickly comment as well, that it is about that relationship, and what I've been practicing, and grateful to those who started developing this small step of producing land acknowledgements. And if it's easy to say at the beginning of a conference or the beginning of a class, that we acknowledge the land upon which we're on. We acknowledge the indigenous people who have stewarded the land for millennia, and we honor and acknowledge the ancestors, both plant, animal, trees, rocks, the water, all these ancestors upon which this land is made up of. It's easy to have these land acknowledgements, but to really understand the history behind that, and there is some work that has to be done to face the history, the authentic history of places. The history that is told, or that people might start to comprehend, where there's a lot of change packed in, is in the last 500 years. But prior to that, there's millennia of knowledge that is still housed within the blades of grass that stem from Camas. Those seeds have ancestral knowledge of the land. The flower that blooms from that has ancestral knowledge of this land and this place. And for people to start to even conceptualize that, there's a long way to go, and I include myself in that. Yes, I'm Nimipu, and I feel that I have this spiritual connection to this place, and I do, because of the genes and the blood that runs through my veins, that ancestral connection that spans the millennium. But still, to conceptualize that in a mental and emotional and physical frame, beyond the spiritual, is something that takes a lot of work. And so for people to develop that, there's indigenous people and non-indigenous alike, we have a long ways to go to keep alive that connection. And in every fabric of my being, of mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, I hope and strive to do that, because if we don't do it, we can't expect others to do it. And it's not something that can be taught. It's something that each of us individually have to pursue in our journey in life.
Wow, folks, I'm just blown away by the wisdom, the advice, the knowledge that we shared here today. It is a little past 1, and so I'm going to go ahead and close out our session for today. Thank you so much, Sierra Green, for joining us. Josiah, thank you for taking the time out of your guys' busy schedules to share information with us on how to respectfully navigate through tourism and the importance of ecological knowledge and its sacredness. I would like for you all to join us for our next webinar with guest hosts Dan Manikin and Quanah Matheson. And the title is going to be Establish a Team of Cultural Consultants and Performers. And I know both of these individuals are going to be a wealth of knowledge, just as Josiah and Sierra have been today. You can register at www.nativebiz.org. We'll also be sending out some promotional pieces as well. So feel free to contact myself, Station Morphine at nestperstourism.org if you have any questions to follow up with this particular webinar. I did record most of the session today, and so I know for me it's going to be a valuable piece to continue to use as a resource in learning and expanding my knowledge base, and to help perpetuate and promote cultural tourism in a way that's respectful for all people. But again, thank you, Sierra. Thank you, Josiah. Thank you to the IDRS Acorn Project, and we will see you on our next webinar, session 10 on July 7th, the same time and same place. So we hope to see you soon. Thank you very much, folks.